the members of the first team had a very vague idea what they were searching for. So they were collecting plants for their botanist.
Say one more thing. Up until this weekend, I met Bob Gimlin just one time. That was the day that they took the film. Roger called me at 6:30 that night, and I believe, Bob, didn't you guys take that film about 1 o'clock in the afternoon? 6:30, Roger called me. And he told me, he said, Al, I got a picture of that son of a gun. And I laughed, and my wife laughed harder. She said, she made fun of me. He was the biggest horse laugh you ever heard. But I went down to see Bob. I spent, it must have been 3 hours that night, didn't time. I know, a long time. Yeah, anyway, it was very interesting, and to this day, this is the only time I ever saw Bob, but it was great. I mean, Roger called me, as far as I know, I was the only person outside of Bob and his family that knew it before I did. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. Anyway, it was a privilege. Anyway, thank you, man.
Good afternoon. My name is Bob Gimlin. I reside in Yakima, Washington. And believe it or not, I don't have a good, colorful story like Hal had there. I was a non-believer also. And I happened to be up in Vancouver, British Columbia in 1964. And I went to Harrison Hot Springs. And it's in Sasquatch country. And I looked over there and I thought, and my wife said, that must be an Indian tribe. I said, well, they're not very good looking Indians, you know. And so anyway, that was shortly after that, Roger Patterson had contacted me, and he had some cassette tapes and some plaster footprints of calves. And he started talking to me about this. He called it Bigfoot at that time. He had, I think, had read Dr. Ivan Sanderson's book and some other books, and I don't really know what inspired Roger to get involved so deeply in this. But he kept talking to me about it, and I thought, well, some of these people that he played the tapes of and showed me the foot casts of the plaster casts, well, they must know, there must be something there that I don't understand, and a lot of things I don't understand and don't agree with. So I was not lucky enough to, like Al, to see a footprint prior to that day when Roger and I was down here in the Bluff Creek area and saw the creature. And this, unfortunately, I was kind of a non-believer. There was a gray area there in my mind that they might exist, but I'm kind of one of those guys, show me and I'll believe it. So that's where I kind of stand. So I don't really have a lot of background in the thing, except I rode a lot in the mountains and did quite a bit of research as far as the hunting and looking part. And other than that, you know, Roger was the main guy in that, pushing me on through it. And I was the horse guy, riding and taking him along with me and listening to those tapes and looking at those plaster casts. Thank you.
I met some fellows over, good afternoon, name's Thomas Steger, and I have a question for Bob. I was wondering, Bob, if looking back at your life before those 45 or so seconds in October 1967, and looking at your life after, do you ever look back and regret the day you said, sure, Roger, I'll go to California with you?
Tom, that's kind of a loaded question. I didn't regret it at the time, and I definitely don't regret it today after meeting all you folks here. But there has been a time in my life when, yes, I wished I hadn't been there, because times have changed. People are accepting things a whole lot better now than they did back in those days, it seems to me. Unfortunately, my wife took an awful lot of ridicule, and I took a lot of ridicule, and I could handle it quite well. Naturally, she's not quite as thick-skinned as me. I'm grateful for that. But she's been pretty negative from some of the situations that's happened to me over the years. But I don't want to discourage anybody from going out there and doing their thing and trying to get more evidence, because it appears to me that the interest here in this group is really fantastic. And the panels that we've had here, I've learned an awful lot myself. And naturally, at my age, I'm not going to go out there looking again, but we've got a lot of young people here extremely interested in this. And I tell them, go get it.
One more time, what you actually experienced during that brief period moment when the film was being taken.
Well, it's kind of hard to start at one place and at another, but what I'll try to do for you folks is tell you what happened that particular few seconds before Roger shot this film. We were riding up this creek bottom bed on, I'm not sure whether I'm correct in saying, we were riding on the right-hand side of the creek. Now, whether that was north, south, east, or west, I don't really remember, or we didn't at the time even. But there was a big downfall tree with the roots system with the dirt in it yet, and apparently the creek had rerouted itself around this downfall tree. Roger was in the lead. He was in the front of me riding his horse, and I was following behind, fairly close. I don't remember the exact footage, but it was fairly close behind Roger. And when we made that turn around this downfall tree, some horses just kind of blew up. And Roger's little horse was a younger horse. Younger horse than the horse that I was riding. I was riding an old season quarter horse, a roping horse. And Roger's horse kind of blew up, and mine did enough. But Roger was trying to control his horse and also get a hold of his camera, which is in his saddlebag. Well, I don't know how many people here have tried to ride a horse and it's jumping around with one hand and trying to reach back and get something out of the saddlebag, but it's not all that easy to do. And Big Roger was a very agile and athletic man. He still was having a problem. So when his horse reared up and kind of flipped over down, not on him, but backwards and down, he finally managed to get the camera out. He ran across the creek and up this little sandbar. It had a slight elevation, and at the time he was running, he had the camera to his eye, and he stumbled and fell to his knees, kind of, sort of, in a way. And with me controlling my horse and my field of view, was able to see Roger do this. the same time trying to keep my eye on the creature. And Roger finally stabilized himself on a log that you probably will see if you have seen the film footage at the beginning of it. And then I rode across the creek, and I don't know how many people here know this, but when you see the creature swing and look kind of back, that's when I rode across the creek on my horse. And then if you'll remember the film footage, the creature turned, semi-turned its head and looked back again. And that's the time I dismounted with my 30-06 rifle. And from then on, the creature just continued to walk. And Roger relocated to get a better view and a better shot because the thing was going behind a few trees, or there was, I don't know, behind trees, don't get me wrong, there was trees in between his view. And so when he relocated, then I just stood on the ground and I never brought the rifle to my shoulder. And I didn't have any intention to shoot it unless it was hostile and came back to attack us. And Roger was afoot, didn't have his horse. So that was the only reason that I brought the rifle out of the scabbard and held it in my hand. So from that on, the creature disappeared, and some people asked me why we didn't follow it. I got back on my horse and I wanted to follow it because I was excited. And Roger didn't want me to because he was afoot, and things we had seen, there had been 3 footprints around the water tank. He wasn't sure that there was 2 more in the area, and he definitely didn't want to left there afoot. So consequently, it took us a few minutes to get the horses caught up. Roger put new film in his camera, and then we did ride the same direction that the creature disappeared. And we followed the scuffs in the gravel. It was just a gravel bed at the base of the creek until we saw one partial footprint that had got wet in the creek and stepped on a big flat rock. And then it went right up through the mountains, up through some cliff-like area, which we could not have followed it other than by foot. And if you'll know, on October 20th, the days are fairly short, so by then the sun was getting far in the west. And Roger wanted to go back and get some casts of the footprints and do some work there. And he had talked to a gentleman in Canada that tracked dogs and figured he could track anything. So Roger wanted to get down, call this gentleman in Canada, and try and get him there with the track dogs. And that's when we went in, and Roger went in and he mailed the film, or threw the film out, or however it was. I stayed in the truck, and that's when we went back and talked to Mr. Al Hodson. I think I'm getting this fairly right in the sequence. I'm not even real sure of that, but I'll also add this. We've been down there quite some time, and I rode every day, long hours from daylight till dark, and I was a little bit tired, so a lot of things didn't really come to my senses until afterwards, and even then I didn't remember just everything in sequence. So unfortunately, it started raining that early morning, and it rained so hard that there was no way we were going to be able to stay in there, because I had a 2-wheel drive, 1-ton dual truck with a horse stand on it. And the creek was coming up rapidly, so I knew I had to get across the creek. By the time we got all this gear loaded and the horses in and got across the creek, there was mudslides coming down the side of the mountain. And believe me, it was a real nightmare getting out of there that day. And it took us almost all day to get out of there and down to the main highway. And that's about all I can tell you about that short film footage and what happened to us there in those few seconds. And so unfortunately, we didn't get to the dog guys got down there, I guess.
Each of these speakers will just give a 1 or 2 minute description of where it started for them and in what context did they become involved in the Bigfoot phenomenon. And after the last of our presenters has given you that context, We'll then call for you to line up if you have a question, and then you'll come up to the podium and deliver that question. Remember, when you come up here, you have to put your face as close to this microphone as I'm doing right now. Okay? Let's start, please, with our very own Al Hutz.
That really gives me this big build-up. You know, I'm not an expert at all. I just happen to be there, as one person said, Al's an expert by default. He just happened to be there. And you know, there's been things here that was in my time with about Bigfoot. There was a time in 1958, 1959, 1960, that I absolutely said I will have nothing to do with that hoax. And so I said, no way, I don't want anything to do with it. I mean, after Bob Gimlin had made a cast, I still said, no way. They wanted to sell me a cast and put it in the store, and I said, I have nothing to do with a hoax like this. I'm not going to be a party to it. But as time went on, Betty Allen talked me into going up there and taking her out and seeing some tracks, and I got hooked. I seen some things that was, when I first went up there with her, I knew the tracks were there. It was just a case of, okay, tracks are there, we'll go up and take a look at them. Well, I found some tracks myself, and that did it. And from then on, I did a lot of looking for a long time. Not finding a lot. I did find a few instances where one instance I found tracks in the creek, which I made a cast. We have in the museum, and also make copies of it to be sold. We do have that one. Also, I found some others that frankly, I'm sorry I didn't cast. One of them, way back up Willow Creek, I don't know where it was. I had to crawl through the underbrush. Determined to find something. I went up there. I found one single track where apparently he had stepped in the creek, he waded up the creek, and a little pedestrian come out through there and stuff there, and then he got on the creek again. Old and tiny was in it, but it convinced me that, hey, there's something here. And then I found a place that, when Doug, I think last night, was talking about something being up near the water source was moist and leave a track. Further away it was too dry. I found this very thing. But I couldn't believe it. What I found was what I think was a knee print. It was about that wide and about that deep, and right up against a clear pool of water. The sand was very damp. You know how it is at the edge. It was very damp. Back where the feet would have been, where a track would have been, it was all chopped up. It was dry. They're all chopped up. You couldn't see it at all. You couldn't see a thing. Well, stupid me, I had plaster of Paris. I don't know who wants to cast with a knee print. So I didn't do it. And then I find out that, Bob Gimlin made a cast of one, but it broke, got wet and broke something. Anyway, but you know, one significant thing that I found out just a few months ago, Jerry Crew, who he was a friend of mine, I knew him back at the time he made this cast and before. And what I didn't know, he wasn't alone when he found his tracks. There was two other guys with him. One guy was just passing, and just has since passed away. He was killed in an accident up in Bend, Oregon, a truck accident, and very bad accident. But anyway, there was a third guy. He is here with us today, but he said, Al, I can't add anything to this, but he was there. He saw the tracks when Jerry found these tracks. He's saying right over here, if I can get him to stand up, is Reverend J.Q. Hubbard, a friend of mine.
Well, my name is Edward Patrick. I was living down in New Ball in 1959. And when these tracks appeared in Bluff Creek area, and the man there from Washington, his name was Ray Wallace. He was up there in Bluff Creek with equipment putting in a new road, Bluff Creek Road. And one morning, those tracks appeared on his job site and scared some of the workers pretty bad because they left in a few days afraid to stay on a job like a man that big around. Well, anyhow, the word got around about those tracks up on Bluff Creek, how huge they were, and then I guess the papers got a hold of it. And then Bob Titmus over in Anderson, he see about it in the paper. And so he's interested in it. And I'm living in Hoopball, so he and I have been friends for many years. So he came out and we went up and took a look at them. They look for real, but they look too big to be real. That first time we ever see a track that we must have found the biggest one there was, because it was 17 inches long, and it was 5 inches across the ball of the foot, and 7 inches across the ball of the foot, and it was 5 inches across the heel. And where I wouldn't make a track in a sandbar, that would sink down, back down, maybe about a half an inch in the sandbar. But Bob also came out with plaster Paris and stuff to make a cast of the tracks, which he did. Well, that eventually got us pretty interested in it. And then we both took a lot of time up there and searching for it. We never did see an animal. Well, we found several of those tracks, and they seemed to be following the creek beds. Maybe they were down there looking for food or something, but I don't know. But that's where the footprints always showed up the best, so that's where they were made. So evidently we got interested in enough to got Tom Slick out of San Antonio involved, because he had a expedition in the Himalayas looking for the Yeti. Well, he and his pilot flew up here, and we took him up there and showed him those tracks, and they got really interested in it. And Tom Slick put up money and started this expedition. And so then there was many people involved in it. Ivan Marks from Bernie, he's a bear hunter over there. And John Green was involved in it. And we had several people involved in it by this time. And of course, this is in the early fall. And coming 1st of November, we noticed that thing was going down that Bluff Creek, and it seemed to do that always the 1st of November. So the next year after that, so we're gonna be there waiting for him when he comes by. But he never came by. And it could be the reason why he didn't come by was we had these cameras set up to catch his picture when he hit that little trip line. We thought he wouldn't see. I thought maybe he'd think it was just a cobweb and bat it out of his way. But he didn't come down there. And the creature, when he did come under a line, he would go under it. Now he had to stoop to get under it. And when, like if there was a log laying across the creek or something, he would crawl under it. We've discovered he would crawl under something when it could have been just as easy to hop over it or go around it. Well, anyway, we never ever got a glimpse of it that November. But anyway, we had a couple donkeys employed. They weren't mules, they were donkeys. Helicopter involved. Well, anyway, one winter they took them mule donkeys, and a couple guys went way back in there to a place called Dr. Rock. I think some of the native people around here know that place. And it come a bad snowstorm. So they were caught in there. They didn't have feed for nothing, but the boys made them some pancakes, the mule donkeys, and that's what them donkeys had for breakfast. I don't.
I'd gotten involved with this in British Columbia back in 1957. So there's a picture in the paper of Jerry Crew holding this cast on Bluff Creek in 1958. My wife and I and another fellow, we came down here to see what it was all about. And on that occasion, I saw a few old tracks up on the Bluff Creek Road. And, they weren't anything that you could argue couldn't have been fake, but it was impressive certainly, and the things that people told us were even more impressive. That these tracks come down off a steep side hill, and they'd wander by the equipment too close for anything, to any other machine to have made them, and that they would go down a steep slope into the creek and come up again. And there was a lot of publicity around that time, of course. There were theories about how somebody had a set of tracks mounted on tractor treads, and there were also stories about false feet you could buy in a joke shop, about a mental case who'd been kept chained up and got away, and all sorts of interesting yarns. There didn't seem to be any knowledge of that there were big, hairy, giant things reported anywhere, which is what I was so familiar with. Anyway, on the way home, I went and talked to Bob Titmus, who'd been out to examine the tracks. And several weeks later, I got a letter from Bob saying that he had found new tracks on the sandbar, and that they were different from the ones on the road. So a couple of us came back down and went with Bob. I don't think I met Ed at that time, but anyway, we went to look on the sandbar, and Bob had cast 4 of the tracks.
My name is Daniel Perez. I'm a Bigfoot investigator and researcher. For the past 20 years, 15 years, my focus has been just one thing, Patterson Gimlin film, which I think is a very good piece of evidence. So I'm going to get right to my questions. I'm from Los Angeles, California, in case you want to know. Union licensed electrician. My first question is for Al Hodgson. Before I ask the question, October 21st, 1967, one day after the film was shot, the Eureka Times Standard published an article about Roger's film. It's been almost 36 years later, And I spoke with the Time Standard yesterday, and I said, did you realize that no one has ever figured out the byline to the article that was in that newspaper article? At the time, a fellow by the name of Andrew Genzoili was their Bigfoot writer. He's since passed on. I spoke with the widow. I asked her, is this article in the flavor of what your husband used to write? And she told me no. So the question is, who wrote that article? No one knows. But here's the question for Al Hodgson. Do you recall, this must have been the second time you met Roger Patterson, on October 20th, when you, Bob Gimlin, Roger, and Sil McCoy, who's now deceased, met down at the ranger station. At that time, did Roger use the phone to telephone the Eureka Time Standard? Because somehow he had to have called the newspaper to talk with these people. Were you present when he made a phone call?
Well, I just have to say that it's possible that he did make a phone call. Incidentally, to go back just a little bit, it was not Andy Genzoili that wrote those articles in the paper. A lady by the name of Betty Allen was a guest columnist in Genzoili's column, and she wrote those articles. And in fact, she was a lady that got me interested in this. But yes, I talked to Bob Gimlin and Roger Patterson that evening after they called me. But another correction I need to make to you is that was not the second time I'd ever talked to Roger in person. I don't know how many times, but it was several. Roger used to come through, I don't know how often, but quite a number of times. From the fairly early 60s somewhere, he was coming through once in a while.
I met Bob Gimlin first in summer 1990 at his home in Yakima. It was reported, and I want to confirm or deny this, it was reported that both you and the late Roger Patterson, before you hit the blacktop, on the way out after having shot this film, that you stopped at a fellow by the name of John Schuschman in a cabin and got a shower. Is this correct?
I'm sorry, Dan, I don't remember that. He may have, and it's I don't remember.
And my last question is for John Green. I guess I've been in touch with John Green since about 1977 or 1978, so we both know each other quite well. When you came up with Renee DeHinden to Northern California to the Blue Creek Mountain, August, September 1967, and observed the 15-inch tracks, and then 1 month, well, in October 20th, Roger gets the movie, and the 14-inch tracks, 14 and 1/2-inch tracks were associated with that film. A fellow by the name of Dr. Jeff Meldrum is of the contention that the 14.5-inch track is the same track as the 15-inch track that was seen by you and Renee DeHinden with your own eyes on Blue Creek Mountain. What is your opinion about the 15-inch track being the 14.5-inch track, one of the same, or are they two different individuals in your opinion?
I think I know that 15-inch track as well as I know on face. It's not the same track.
Construction. All of this has a reasonably complicated construction.
Well, it's been a great weekend, a little warm, but I wrote this song over the course of the last year, and my wife said, "Why are you bringing your guitar? You're going to be camping." I said, well, I might be able to play it. So it's called Bigfoot, the Living Legend.
happy birthday to my niece who's not here, but she'll see it someday. Magic, and say what a pleasure it is to be here with the panel that's about to speak, everyone that's been here this weekend, and all of you. So hope you enjoy it. A little bit of humor, a little bit of music. Well, I'm a mystery to everybody, and I can't even believe I exist. Well, I'm alive and free, as real as can be, roaming through the forest mist. Many a year in the canyons you'll hear my songs that many call screams. I stay as far as I can away from man, living on salmon and drinking from streams. Running through the forest, I don't wear no boot, 'cause I'm a living legend that they call Bigfoot. And taking my time, I don't wear no watch, 'cause I'm the timeless creature that they call Sasquatch. You might see me running around the bend, but when you get there, you say, where are you, friend? I'm nearby, but you don't get the hint, 'cause you're busy pouring plaster in my Bigfoot print. Oh, running through the forest, I don't wear no boots, 'cause I'm a living legend that they call Bigfoot. Taking my time, I don't need no watch, 'cause I'm a timeless creature that they call Sasquatch. Deep in the dark, the forest night, just at the edge of your campfire's light, I'm camouflaged, all covered in hair. If it wasn't for my smell, you wouldn't know I was there. Full of desire, I'm drawn by the songs that I hear. Well, maybe it's the beat, maybe it's the beer. Oh, running through the forest, I don't wear no boot, 'cause I'm a living legend that they call Bigfoot. And taking my time, I don't wear no watch, 'cause I'm the timeless creature that they call Sasquatch. You may not believe a creature like me can be living near you so happy and free. I don't wanna meet you and I'll see what you do. All the killing and the fighting, you're the savage, it's true. I'm running through the forest, I don't wear no boots, 'cause I'm a living legend that they call Bigfoot. Hey, and taking my time, I don't need no watch, 'cause I'm the timeless creature that they call Sasquatch. Thank you.